Welcome to the Power of Love show, sponsored by the TJ Jackson Foundation, where we shine a light on loss and grief and how it impacts our lives. We are here to provide hope, resources, and a community so no one feels alone in their grief. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Power of Love show, sponsored by the TJ Jackson Foundation, where we shine a light on loss and grief and how it impacts our lives. I am TJ Jackson, and with me is my eldest brother, Mr. Taj Jackson. What is going on, Taj?
How's it going, TJ?
It's going all right, man. It's going all right. I'm in Paris, France, so it's 10:13. It's hot, which is why you see my face looking a little humid, I'll say. But everything is going really well, man.
Good.
It's a beautiful. It was a beautiful day. The Parisians are always so sweet and nice, and
they
it's
are.
an awesome city. So everything's good. How's your world going? What's going on with you?
Good. Just fatherhood and a bunch of other stuff. Saw an amazing movie, the Top Gun movie, the new one.
Did you just now see it?
Yeah, I just for Father's Day I saw it. So yeah.
What
Yeah,
took
when you
so
have kids, you can't get out as much.
I was about to say, I asked what took you so long, and that answer you didn't
you
hesitate
gotta
on it. I
coordinate
know about that.
babysitting and stuff like that. So, but
At
yeah,
least
it
you
was
caught it in the
definitely.
theater.
Yeah, it was great. So I suggest anyone that hasn't seen it to see it. Watch the original first, but then definitely watch it.
That's what I
amazing.
did, Taj. I hadn't seen the original. I saw the original the day before seeing the second one, and it was so great. Well done. So well done.
I heard the hype and all that stuff and still delivered. So that's tells you something in that way.
Well, very, very cool. I thought, like I said, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I would like Top Gun, but I ended up really, really liking it. So it was really cool.
Yeah, nice.
Well, anyways, we are live, everyone. You may be watching us on Facebook, on YouTube. You may be listening to us as well on a podcast. Yes, every show we do is also available to be listened to. So you can listen to us on your way to school, on your way to work, whenever you want. You can go on any streaming platform and you will be able to find us there under TJ Jackson Foundation. And if you do enjoy what we do, our podcast or show, please consider leaving a like, leave a comment. It helps the algorithm. It helps people find us who may need us. So make sure to do that. But anyways, another thing I need to say is the disclaimer is that we are not licensed therapists. We are just ordinary people who've experienced loss in our lives. We've been impacted by it and we have learned from it. So what we like to do is share our opinions in an attempt to help you, the viewer, the listener, get through whatever it is you are going through. Saying that if you need professional help, we urge you to seek it and to find it. Please do not just rely on us. Okay, so Taj, that was a disclaimer. You mentioned your highlight of your week. Was it besides Father's Day? Father's Day is always a highlight for us. Taj, Father's Day number 2 for you or 3?
3, I would assume.
Okay.
Maybe more.
The Father's Day. I'm trying to think what I did for Father's Day. I don't even know, man. I don't know. I think I was in Spain actually, and Spain was a country I've always wanted to go to.
Yeah, remember
and enjoy from a vacation standpoint. And we got to do it, and it was a lot of fun. So it was all good.
Real quick, I also did a murder mystery dinner.
What?
Where you go, a murder mystery dinner, like where you go and there's actors and you have to find out who did it. Like there's a murder while you're having dinner. It's really cool. Yeah. So that was our first time doing it, but it was just something new to try, and it was a lot of fun. So
all right, leave it up to Taj Jackson to do those things.
Yeah, I didn't find it, but find his mom found it. But it was exciting for our anniversary to go do.
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, Taj, like I said, I'm in Paris, and it could have been easy to not or postpone the show or not do a show today, but we have a very special guest, and I just thought it was very important to have the show.
Yes.
Taj, you are always consistent being able to do a show. It's me when we miss, why we miss, but not missing today, because on today's episode of the Power of Love show, we welcome special guest, Julia Morin. And Julia is a writer, a certified grief educator, and grief support specialist. And she is the face behind the Instagram community at girl_meets_grief, which she launched over Mother's Day weekend in 2021. Julia is a childhood grief survivor who lost her mother suddenly and tragically 27 years ago when she was 8 years old, less than 1 week after Mother's Day, and experienced a number of other losses in her life. She is fiercely passionate about normalizing conversations and ending the stigma around grief. As she continues to navigate the various manifestations of this significant early loss in her life. Julia's writing on grief and mental health has been published by Chicken Soup for the Soul, The Mighty, and The Manifestation, among others. And she has been a guest on podcasts including Got Grief and How to Grieve. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Julia Morin to the Power of Love show.
Yeah.
Julia,
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me.
how are you doing?
I'm okay. I've been, I could use some chicken soup for
Yeah?
Yeah.
I have been sick for the last week, so you'll hear a little nasal and, congestion, but other than that, I'm hanging in there.
Well, you sound great. I
Yeah.
wouldn't worry about that. And you know what, Julia, when I was saying the intro, I have a list of questions to ask you, and Taj is going to ask you a couple questions. But one thing off the top of my head, was how I mentioned how one of your goals is to normalize the discussion around grief. That's something we talk about ourselves, is trying to normalize grief talk. Why do you think it's so difficult for us to have conversations about grief?
That's a loaded question. I think there's a lot to unpack there. One thing I will say, I've been reading, I don't know if you're familiar with Megan Devine, but she is a writer and she was a therapist. She, lost her partner. She witnessed his drowning, and she has written a book called "It's Okay That You're Not Okay." So I've been reading that, and something that she says that really stuck with me is like, we can see ourselves in other people's losses and grief, and we don't want to go there, right? We don't want it to happen to us. We say that to people. I can't imagine how you're feeling. I can't imagine what you're going through. And I think the truth is we can imagine it, we just don't want to. So I think that's part of it, is it's a self-protective kind of thing. Like, if you open yourself up to that, to somebody else's pain, you're not only letting it into yourself, but you're imagining, like, what if that was you? What if that did happen to you? So I think that is a big piece of it, is like, we would rather keep that at an arm's length and, tell people to move on and get over it, and it will get better, and time heals everything, and everything happens for a reason, and all those wonderful platitudes that people like to use. But that's not reality. It's, the reality is that we will all experience grief. It's just a matter of when and how. So
I want to commend you for that answer. I've asked that question several times to other guests, and your answer was very original, but true, and profound all at the same time. I think you're 100% right. And I never thought of that. I think when we say I couldn't imagine that, I think we can, and that's what scares us. So I appreciate that answer. Now, in your case, like us, we lost our mother at a young age, but you were even younger. You were only 8 years old. So my question, I guess, was grief education something you always wanted to pursue when you got older, or did something ignite that passion within you as an adult?
yeah, so it really has not been until, I would say, like the last year and a half is when that spark kind of lit. I, now that I'm 35 and kind of in hindsight and looking back, I can see just how many years I spent avoiding and really ignoring my grief because, largely because of these societal messages that are so wrong and not accurate and not rooted in reality, that, you know, in my mind, it was like, it was a long time ago. It was 20 plus years ago. You know, once I went through my adolescence and my early adulthood and adulthood, I felt like I couldn't openly share about it or express that pain, because it was like, oh, well, this happened over 20 years ago. Like, you're supposed to be past it. So I think I internalized a lot of those messages of, this shouldn't still be so hard. You shouldn't be talking about it. You shouldn't be writing about it. You shouldn't be sharing about it. And so I definitely suppressed a lot of what I was really feeling, because I felt I'm not supposed to feel this way anymore. Like, this isn't what society is telling me I should be feeling, or, you know, openly expressing this. So I think, you know, I spent a lot of years kind of running and hiding from it and pretending like either it didn't happen or it happened so long ago it doesn't affect me anymore. And it really wasn't until, I would say, my late 20s, one of many times that I was in therapy throughout my life, that a therapist actually looked at me and said, "You survived a trauma." And I was like, it was like a light bulb moment in my head, because I never even, it sounds crazy, like in hindsight, that I never made that connection, but I was like, oh, like that, you know, that sudden loss when I was at such a young age and still developing, you know, emotionally and cognitively and all of those things. And for the last time I ever saw my mom in my life, to be like watching her be put into an ambulance in my driveway, that stays with you. You don't, there's no moving on from that, you know? So for somebody to actually validate that and say, like, that was a trauma and you haven't even begun to process that and unpack it, I was like, holy moly. Like, it was just, that was like an epiphany for me. And so that wasn't the point where I really did something with that necessarily, but it, you know, it stuck in my head, like, there's nothing wrong with me. Just because I'm almost 30 and I'm still struggling with this, that's normal.
At what point did you think it wasn't normal, or you shouldn't be struggling with it?
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is, like, so many times that I was in therapy throughout my life, you know, I started therapy as a child. My father brought my sister and I after our mom died. And obviously I don't remember much of that, but other points in my life, just like situationally, a breakup, a job loss, I would go back to therapy. And it's crazy to me now that nobody like asked me about that loss. We didn't even get into it. We didn't dig into it. It was just like buried, and it wasn't talked about, and it wasn't tied into what I was going through at the moment and how, you know, that could have been impacting how I was responding to things. It was just like, oh, that's in the past. Like, that has nothing to do with now. So I did for a long time, I think, feel like, you know, I pushed it down and kind of pretended, honestly, that, well, that was a long time ago and that can't possibly be causing what I'm feeling now or related to what I'm feeling now. So I would say it wasn't until I was like, and I'm 35 now, right? Like my early 30s, that I started to really write more about it and put it out there more, and kind of like separate myself from that societal stigma that I was internalizing, because I realized, like, those feelings and thoughts were not mine. You know, I was absorbing them from other people. So it was really, a year and a half ago that I pursued my first grief support training, and that was the grief support specialist. It was an online certificate. And then I took a few months off, and then I did David Kessler's Grief Educator program. And somewhere in that span of time was when I launched my Instagram community, just on a whim. It was Mother's Day weekend, and I felt, you know, lonely and disconnected, like I often do. And I was just sitting there, like, and I had the interview with the Got Grief podcast that weekend as well. And I don't know, I just, like, a a switch went off in my head, like, you know, what else can I do with this to not only help myself, but maybe help other people?
Mm.
And so I just was like, okay, I'll start an Instagram, and didn't think it would go anywhere. I mean, I just thought maybe people I knew would follow it, or, you know, I would post things that I was writing or stuff like that. And that was just over a year ago, and I'm over 3,000 followers now. So I know
Nice.
in the world that's not that much, but to me,
Oh no, that's
That's a
great.
lot. That's a lot.
That's a
Yeah.
lot. That's great. You're
Yeah.
impacting people and helping people, which is beautiful, you know,
One
and it
person is a
shows that.
lot in terms of helping someone. So
Yeah,
3,000 is a lot. Yeah. So
good for
I have a
you.
question in terms of just, do you think it's the young age? Because you said you, when I lost my mom, I was 21-ish area, but my brothers were younger, obviously. In that and we dealt with, even though we were under the same household, we dealt with it differently because of age and other stuff. But I wouldn't assume TJ's friends could identify with it because he's 5 years younger than me. So a lot of his friends probably didn't experience grief the same way, or had not experienced grief yet. Well, I was at 21. Maybe there were a couple people that had in my circle, but you were at a young age of 8, where there's really, like, the people you're going to school with really don't get it in that way. And maybe that might be one of the reasons why you can identify with it, was because they no one was bringing it up because they can identify with it. But it's just, I'm so happy you got that validation later on, because it is important to know that, like, this is a trauma, this is something that changes your life forever, and you'll never be normal in that way. You'll always be different in a way. You'll always be part of a club that no one wants to be part of.
yeah, I think that is another thing that society gets so wrong, especially with childhood loss and grief, is, you know, I was finally told as an adult that I literally was not cognitively able to process that loss at that age. It was like beyond my, you know, my cognitive and mental and emotional abilities. My brain was still growing and developing and all that. So, you know, the way I describe it now is like, I feel like there's this 8-year-old still like frozen inside of me that, you know, just couldn't make sense of that at that time. And that same therapist was the one that said to me, like, I know it feels like, you know, you're almost 30 and you were 8 when this happened and you should be past it by now. And she was like, you haven't even processed it yet. It's still just like kind of bubbling under the surface, just waiting to come out. And there are so many layers of it to kind of peel back and explore and try to make sense of. So I think it does such a disservice to childhood grief survivors, which is what I refer to it as, to just have this attitude like, well, it's in the past. It was a long time ago, because they often have this delayed processing. Like, you can't wrap your head around it until you are an adult. And by that point, it's like people are making you feel like there's something wrong with you because you're still having a hard time, you know?
Yeah, I'm I'll say I'll be perfectly blunt and upfront, is that, you know, when I first lost my mother, I thought by this age I should be perfectly fine, and that's just not what happens. It happened to me, or for me, it's been like an ever changing, ever evolving situation, or ever evolving kind of grief experience. And I do remember some people saying that at a young age, but I don't think I could really understand what that meant. And for us, you know, having kids, Taj may have went through this or is going to experience. It gets really tough in a completely different way that our mother's not here with us. You know, um, one question I had for you, Julia, for us, I think for you too, Taj. I don't like putting words in your mouth. But for at least me, doing this show has been very helpful. It's been kind of therapeutic, and just it's helped me learn how to grieve and helped with my grieving process. Has all the work you've been doing, have you felt the same? Has it helped you with your grieving and helping you, I guess, handle everything?
Yeah, I think, the whole reason I started it, like I said, was I was coming from a place of, Mother's Day weekend, like just feeling like I know I'm not the only one out there, but I don't hurt, like to your point, I don't know a lot of people even now still that have lost their mothers. Certainly not in childhood. So, it was, I think the sort of mission, so to speak, or goal for me was twofold. And it was not only to help myself just by writing, sharing, getting it out there, but to try to connect with other people and have that commonality to say, like, no two losses or grief situations are the same, certainly. So it's not
Mm,
comparison and, oh, I know exactly how you feel and I've been there.
mm,
Just knowing that you're not alone. And I think we all know that deep down, but it's hard to remember when you're, sitting there missing somebody and feeling sad and, visiting the cemetery and all these things that you're like, I feel like I'm the only one that has to do this. Like every Mother's Day, to have to feel this way. So yeah, I think it has definitely been therapeutic for me, just in terms of my writing and verbalizing and putting those feelings out there. But then just to hear from other people and, strangers just messaging you saying like, oh, this really resonated with me, or, I really needed to hear that today, or something like that. It just, and that's where I get excited about getting more followers. It's not like a popularity thing to me. It's like, oh, I'm reaching more people. Like I can,
yeah,
so.
so cool. So you mentioned, Todd, do you have a question?
No, it's just
Okay.
and I appreciate that exactly what you said in that way, and there's that reward of helping others, especially when you've gone through that loss. So that's why I
Yeah.
always commend what you're doing.
Julia, you just mentioned yourself as a writer, and I mentioned it in the intro as well. So you have been published in many publications, including Chicken Soup for the Soul, which is a great book. You wrote a powerful piece about the loss of your mother for Grappling with Grief, entitled Learning to Dance with the Limp, where you give readers, cool name by the way, where you give readers a glimpse into what this profound loss has looked like and felt like for you as a child and now as an adult. And I'd love to read a little excerpt from that we found inspiring. Here we go. Alchemizing pain into some semblance of positivity does not take the pain away, it just makes it a little bit more bearable and less heavy. Helping others in their own grief journeys will never bring my mom back or undo the years of anguish that losing her has brought into my life. But I think it would make her proud. And it's also a way I can do something constructive with her death. My lifelong grief and longing for her. She is gone, that is indisputable and irreversible fact. But I've been able to keep her memory and legacy alive by sharing her and my grief journey with others and walking beside them as they navigate their own unique paths of grieving. Grief is love in another form. If love never ends, why would grief? We will never stop loving those we have lost, and we will never stop grieving their absence in our lives. Love is forever, grief is forever. Very powerful.
Thank you.
Very,
Wow, that's
very
great.
powerful.
Yeah, very great. Yeah.
Um, that's fantastic. And it's such, you have a way about yourself that's very approachable, very real, very chill. And you connect easy. I think you say things that a lot of people can't really articulate, if that makes sense. Um, do you have a
Relatable.
book, Julia?
What's that?
Do you have a book?
Not yet.
Okay, when are we doing a book? Because that's the next thing.
It's live, but my dad for years has been harping on me about writing a book. I'm like, yeah, when I have more time, like I need to just commit to doing it. And even if it's like writing for 30 minutes every morning or whatever it is, I have, so many essays and different things that I feel like I can sort of pull from, or maybe like a collection of essays even.
Please, Julia, I'm begging you, please, and maybe put all your writings in it. I think you'll be shocked at how impactful that could be for so many, you know. And the reason why I say that is because I'll take my own personal experience.
Mm.
I was a reader when my mother, I'm still a reader, but I was really heavy into books. That was when I first got into it. And when she passed, um, I was searching for a book to help me. And there wasn't that many options. And I know now today there's many more, but I think books, like music, there's so many different ways to say the same thing, and sometimes people connect to different ways. And I think a lot of people would connect with how you would say it. So
Yeah.
please write a book.
Yes.
In in the meantime, does writing about your loss and grief, does it help you? And if so, in what ways?
Yeah, I mean, definitely same as the Instagram community. It's just, I've always been writing. I can't think of a time where I wasn't writing. I remember being a child and reading letters and stories. And I obviously don't really remember this, but I have been told that I wrote a eulogy of sorts and read it at my mom's funeral. Um, so I think it's been kind of a natural way for me to cope with things, and aside from therapy, just another way to work through all of that, all those layers of grief, and um, just get it out there in a different way, I guess. And again, if somebody, to your point, even if one person reads something that I write and they see something, they see a piece of themselves in it and say like, wow, that connected with me, or I can relate to that, or I don't feel so alone now, or whatever it is, to me, it's worth putting that out there. There are some things that I might write that I might keep to myself, but in general, I feel like if it can help somebody else, then it's worth, the temporary discomfort sometimes
Yeah.
of putting it all out there in that way.
We have a question from Dillis, who asks, do you think that trauma associated with grief affects your decision making process even years after the initial loss?
Yeah, the short answer is yes, I do. And, as I think about how to kind of expand on that, um, something I was thinking about earlier today is just, especially with childhood loss, how it's such a like a boomerang that keeps coming back around in so
Mm.
many different ways in our lives. So, that's another place where it's for people to say like, oh, it's in the past, or it was 20 plus years ago, or all of those things. It's like they don't understand all of the ways that it keeps coming back up in your life. So whether it's milestones, holidays, death anniversaries, birthdays, um, and sometimes just ordinary days where something reminds you of of the person you've lost. But it impacts you in so many different ways, and I do think it's hard to separate yourself from that in terms of your life and world perspective and your decision making and your just the way that you view things. I think it changes all of that. I don't know how it couldn't. um,
Mm.
so whether it's thinking like, well, what would my mom think of this decision, or what would my mom do if she were in this position, or just all of the ways that trauma can really like seep into your subconscious even, and you might not even realize that you're making decisions or having thoughts based on that, but I think it does really impact a lot of things.
I want to switch it up a bit and talk about celebrating life milestones. Taj is actually pretty good at it. I'd say very good at it. I struggle more with it. I'm getting better by learning from Taj. But I'm curious to know, obviously it's a challenge, can be challenging after a loss. How have you learned to navigate your major life milestones, and what advice would you give to others who may have recently lost a parent and will have to do the same?
I think for me, the day-to-day of my life, it's just finding ways to make my mom feel like she's present. She loved hummingbirds. Everybody that knows me, like that's just her thing and my thing, and everyone gives me hummingbird things. And um, So I have a lot of hummingbird stuff in my house, and framed pictures of her and of us together, which I wish I had more of. But so, in terms of just the day to day, I think it helps to just have those things and just feel their presence there, in that way. And in terms of milestones, it's hard. It's really hard. Even after all these years, it's like kind of that elephant in the room that's just always there, like that missing seat at the table, or they're just not there, and they're never going to be there. And the thing with early loss is that you have so many of those life stones throughout your life that they miss out on. So, and again, that's not to compare and say like it's harder when it happens at an early age, but I'm just speaking from my own experience that losing her at 8 years old, it was like she missed all of those sporting events as I grew up, and chorus concerts and art shows and proms and graduations and just on and on and on. And I know when I got married a few years ago, that was like a really tough one to navigate, because he wants to not have their mom at their wedding. It's hard. Getting choked up. So in terms of that, like for my wedding, I tried to again just make it feel like she was there as much as I could. I set up a reserved spot for her at the ceremony with a photo and a sign and that kind of thing, and had some of her jewelry and things that belonged to her pinned to my bouquet and stuff like that. So I think there are certainly ways to do it, but the reality is it's not the same. It's never going to replace having them there, but it's just something you can look at and just be reminded of them.
That's a great answer. So you've talked, Julia, about your online presence that you have built with your Instagram page at girl_meets_grief. Can you talk about how launching this page has helped you, if at all, with your own grief?
Yeah, I think like we talked about, it's kind of a twofold. I feel like I'm helping other people, but it is also helpful to me, because not only have I, been able to just think about so many different things, kind of forcing myself to write things from different perspective or think about things differently, but I've connected with so many other people and so many other grief accounts that have just opened up a world to me that I didn't even know was there. First being like, how did I go so long, like not knowing all of these resources, all the support was there? I just never looked for it. So, so aside from, my own account and the work that I'm doing, just all of the people I've met and, other accounts that I've found through this work has been tremendously helpful to just see other, and it's not all mother loss. Some people have lost siblings or fathers, or some have lost mothers, and all these different losses. It helps to give you a different perspective, so that you're not only coming at it from your own perspective, your own experience, and just to see how many types of loss and grief there are, because I think it's easy to just think of it as death. That's the first thing that we go to. But when you start to think about just how many losses there can be in life that result in grief, I mean, there are a lot, and it's not talked about enough, right? It's swept under the rug, and we don't want to go there, whether it's death or divorce or job loss or whatever it is. It's easier to not talk about it, but we're not helping ourselves or anybody else by avoiding it. So
well, I agree completely with Angie's quote that's on the screen. The work that you are doing is honoring your mother. And I think it's very powerful. And I think it's truly amazing that you have 3,000 followers in a year's time. Even if it was 5 years' time, I would honestly say that's really impressive. So continue on. And again, I think it's just this I just think it's because of your style and the way you talk, and you're very just very real about it, and very approachable. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because I think a lot of people obviously are going through so much when they search for grief help, and that's very important to be able to connect with them. So on behalf of our entire foundation, I commend you, and
Yeah.
we appreciate all the work you're doing for the whole grief community. Um, Todd, was there anything else? I have so many great quotes that I'm gonna showcase and read out. But before we get there, I want to know if there's anything else you had, Taj, or a question or anything as we get ready to wrap up.
No, I mean, as you were expressing it, I think just being relatable, which is your strength in
That's
that
the
way.
word.
I know it was. I was letting you keep going, but that's what I see, and that's the beauty of it, because when you do experience that grief, you feel alone, and you're looking for that. I was going to say um, I'm not even going to say the long word, but you're looking for someone to relate to in that way. And so because you're looking for someone to relate to, that's why you feel so alone. And so that's why what you're doing is so important, and it's going to grow and expand, and everyone your help is, they're going to probably reference other people to you in that way. And it's so great, because TJ's right, and whoever, I forgot the person that basically said the statement, but you are honoring your mom, and you're keeping her legacy and life alive in that way. She lives through you, and that's how we've always, me and my brothers have always taken that approach. And it's not the same, but you do feel good about yourself helping other people through them in that way.
Right. I think people just need more voices telling them that what they're feeling
Hmm.
is normal. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard like horror stories of therapists that aren't trained in grief that are like just parroting these platitudes and like, oh, it's been 6 months, it's been a year, like you really should be further along in your healing and things like that. And it's no, it's just so
Yeah, that's
great.
all right.
So, Julia, I'm about to shower you with a lot of love from the comments from our community. Lena says, "Thank you, Julia. By the way, the words your T-shirt is something we should all live by." You got a lot of love about your shirt, by the way. I like your shirt. Says says Angie. Nicole says, "Love your T-shirt." And also another thing is people loved your writing. Carrie
Okay.
says, "Beautiful writing." Georgina says, "So beautiful." Julia, very well written. Angie says, "If love never ends, why should grief?" Love that. I forgot to mention Suzanne with the shirt comment. Jennifer says, "Book, book, book."
Okay.
Book, book, book. So there you go. Book, book, book is something I would have commented as well. George says, "I'm so grateful I was able to be here today and that you have a new follower." Randy says, "Julia has warmth and humor and honesty and bravery. That's why people relate to her." I believe that, Randy, completely.
I love the name
Um,
on Instagram.
Balmy with the super chat says, "Hi, Julia. Just want to say you're gorgeous and you're deeply insightful, and I'm living here for it. Sending British hugs." Belen gave us a super chat, our super sticker. And here's George, who says, "Julia, I'm writing too, and I just want to know you to know it's not easy because sometimes I get to certain parts and I just have to stop because there's pain. So take your time, but definitely write it." So those are just some of the comments that I thought our community gave, and I thought it was important to share. But you really are a strong presence, and I'm looking forward to continuing to hear what you're doing, and hope you keep going and write a book. But before we close, what we like to do, Taj and I, is we like to give our guests a minute, 2 minutes, whatever you want to pretty much leave our community with your final thoughts. It could be anything from your favorite Netflix show, cooking recipe, TikTok dance, or something more impressive or powerful or impactful, I should say. But whatever you want to talk about, the floor is yours.
Okay, so here's a non-grief thing. I wanted to mention our music connection. I have been singing for many years. I grew up with my parents listened to like the Beatles, Billy Joel, Michael Jackson, Fleetwood Mac, Carole King. My mom loves Carly Simon, so I grew up around great music. A fun fact related is that I have auditioned for The Voice 3 times. I've never
Wow.
got through. I went to the open call auditions in New York City twice and once in Boston.
Wow.
And I would never do it again. I don't know why or how I did that 3 times, but it was fun. It was terrifying. I'm done with that chapter, I think. But yeah, I just want to mention that as a little
So cool. Do you have
Wow.
music out there? Can people listen to your music?
SoundCloud page, which I have not updated in a long time. I think it's Julia K87. Don't quote me on that. I think that's my username.
Cool. Well,
We can
that's
put that in
very
the user
exciting.
notes too, or the notes.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
cool.
so
Are
yeah,
you going to
that's
keep doing music? Maybe you should do some grief inspired music.
you're giving me the wheels keep turning.
I
Yeah,
love it.
go for it. I think it's
Yeah.
beautiful. Um, well, anyways, Julia, I thank you so much for being on. As Lena says, your mom would be so proud of you. Um, and Dillis, I forgot to mention, wanted to thank you for answering her question. But I really wanted to thank you for being here. I love your vibe. I think you have an amazing thing about you that is very relatable. And I think I'm begging you, not thinking, but I'm begging you to write a book, whether it takes a year, 2 years, 5 years. Just please put that somewhere on your radar because I think it's a book that you'll be surprised at how impactful it will be for so many. Taj Jackson, was there anything else you wanted to say?
Um, Definitely book. I would love to hear a song too, that
Yeah.
you write or something that, because songs are very expressive in that way. And I think, I kept mentioning the word being relatable and stuff like that. So I feel like, with your amazing voice, singing a song could be something very impactful as well.
April says, I want to hear you sing. Jennifer says, we will find you.
No,
Um,
I've
and
been
and Caitlin has helped us find you. So it's Julia K87 on SoundCloud. So I love it. So I'm gonna check you out too. But yeah, I would think doing some grief songs. Something about the way you are and the way you write, formulating ideas is really cool. So I'll be waiting. You have a follower in me too. But that is it. We're going to wrap up the show. Julia, on behalf of Taj and I and our entire foundation, thank you again for being on. You are always welcome on. Please do not be a stranger. And if you do get to that book, please come visit us again so we can promote it and help people get to it. Anything else either one of you wanted to say before I wrap up?
just
No,
thank you.
just yeah.
Appreciate so much being here and talking to everybody out there and both of you.
Absolutely. To our community, I want to thank you guys as well for being here, supporting us, for the super chats, and just being such a great welcoming community for all our guests. I think that's it, Taj. We're good, right?
Yeah, great episode. Thank you so much for being on and inspiring our community, but also just sharing yourself with us in that way. So thank you.
Cool. All right, you guys. So we'll be back next week at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you guys again for joining us. Julia, thank you. You're amazing. Everyone, make sure to go follow her, her Instagram channel at grief_meets_grief. Let's get her to 4,000, then 5,000, then 10,000. That is, I think, going to happen regardless. As long as you keep it going, Julia, just keep being you. All right, you guys, we are going to sign off. Thank you guys for watching or listening, and have a beautiful rest of your week. Adios, everyone.